Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 5 of season 3 of Arrow called The Secret Origin of Felicity Smoak. And if the reaction I'm seeing online is anything to go by, this really is probably going to go down as one of the best episodes of Arrow in the show's history. People are just really loving this episode, and I count myself among them because this one's really good. Anyway, so let's just kind of get right into things, and let's start off by talking some nods to the comics. Now, just the title of the episode itself, The Secret Origin of Felicity Smoak. Well, Secret Origin is the name of some of the comics they would reprint, like published to like back in the 90s, sort of retell the origins of heroes, just kind of introduce, and they were also in the really olden days, kind of backup stories that they would have in the comics to sort of remind everybody of the origin of various characters, or particularly like characters who weren't major headliners and whatnot. And the 90s ones, they would also mix those in with some new original stories and these really cool profiles of the heroes that it would list their heights, their weights, and all sorts of other little details. And it is actually in those places where the idea of the Flash's base of operations, Central City, being located in Missouri, was first established. So for fans of the comics, those are always really cool things. And like I said, they would give the details and stats and talk about like their abilities. They would mention things like Catwoman is like an Olympic level gymnast and swimmer and all this other fun stuff. But continuing on, another one that I saw that I was really pleased about was past Felicity, dressed basically like the character of Death from Neil Gaiman's Sandman comics. If you're not familiar with those, but you really like Neil Gaiman's other works, like the stuff he's done on Doctor Who and all that, go back and read those. Sandman is just an absolutely legendary series among comic book fans, and Death, the character of Death, is pretty much one of everybody's absolute favorites. She even had two little mini series of her own. I've read both of them. I can't remember what the second one. No, the first one was Death, the High Cost of Living, and the second was called Death, the Time of Your Life. They're both really good. I would recommend High Cost of Living as the better story, and it just sort of introduces you. It's a really great introduction to the character of Death, who is basically sort of the original perky goth girl, who looked an awful lot like a young Winona Ryder. And yeah, just seeing Felicity kind of unofficially cosplaying as her was really darn cool. Also, some nods to the comics. Our bad guy this time around calls himself Brother Eye, and this is the name of basically a satellite that was used to, in more recent history, by Batman to sort of spy on his fellow members of the Justice League, because Batman always thought, well, I need to have a plan in place in case somebody from the Justice League goes bad, and of course this all just blows up in their faces massively, and makes it very ominous from what we saw several episodes ago, where Ray Palmer found the plans to something called OMAC. And if you read the comics, you know about what happens when you put Brother Eye together with OMAC. OMG, is it BAD? And my favorite one, though, was seeing Felicity's boyfriend Cooper. He's wearing this T-shirt in the flashback that has Starro the Conqueror on it. And if you've ever heard of them, Starro is a evil sentient starfish from space who is bent on galactic domination. And yeah, it's crazy, but Starro was actually the star of a really cool Justice League episode that featured a cameo by the Sandman, written by Grant Morrison, art by Howard Porter, the creative team behind one of the best runs ever on Justice League. Now that was all the nods to the comics that I was able to spot, so let's start talking about the characters. And let's sort of start small and work our way up. I guess Dig is officially working full-time for Argus now, as that's how he's paying his bills. I don't really know how great of an idea that is, but it does put him in a position to keep an eye on Amanda Waller, which, considering that she's a friggin' sociopath, is probably not such a bad idea. Laurel. Now, again, Laurel's kind of another example of Laurel is just lashing out differently in a different. Well, basically, she's still lashing out just in a different way by overreacting to the whole situation at the bank. And I really like that Quentin came in there and called her out on it. And when she said, "I can't talk to you about what's going on," he knew better than to press her on that and gave her some really fantastic advice. It's like, look, if you can't talk about this or you don't want to, and obviously if she's saying that to him, she can't tell him why, go and tell it to somebody. And Laurel thankfully does take his advice and opens up to Ted Grant. And Ted is still not the most fleshed out of characters, but from what I've seen of him so far, he seems like a very, very savvy person. He doesn't immediately try and say like, "Hey, maybe I can help you with this." He realizes immediately that this is Laurel's battle to fight. That she doesn't want somebody to come in there and try and solve her problem for her. She wants someone who can help her get stronger so that she can deal with this situation herself. So Ted is obviously a rather perceptive guy. Let's see, moving on. Now, Thea. Okay, one thing here. Shouldn't Thea have been a little more shocked at the whole Malcolm Merlyn is alive thing, at least in front of Oliver? I mean, that whole Malcolm Merlyn is alive? I mean, am I missing something here? I mean, shouldn't that have brought some sort of a reaction from her? I mean, granted, Thea knows perfectly well that he's alive. She was literally fighting him that morning, but she does need to maintain some sort of a pretense in front of Oliver. And I really did enjoy them kind of getting their brother and sister relationship back on track. Looks like Oliver's going to be moving in with Thea, and points to Thea for realizing that Oliver did indeed have a point, that Malcolm Merlyn's money was blood money, and it's pretty crap to live off of something like that. On the other hand, Thea did have a fair point. It's like, look, without this money, I've basically got nothing. So can you really blame me for using it to kind of get my life in order? So, and again, she did eventually come around to, okay, once I've got my life in order, I'm going to donate the rest of this money to the victims of Malcolm Merlyn. Okay, so that's cool. It was certainly fun watching Oliver get to call her Speedy again and having that great little conversation with her about family. And then it all pans over to Malcolm Merlyn watching this, and it's like, oh, my greatest, one of my, well, no, obviously his greatest enemy is Rachel. Cool. It's like my major enemy and my daughter are living together, and it's like, this sucks. This sucks, and not even my really, really awesome looking jacket can make this suck even less. And sweet God, that was an awesome jacket he had. Did you notice that? I'm like, oh man, I totally want Malcolm Merlyn's jacket. Oh yeah, and Laurel also got, I couldn't exactly tell what that was, what kind of piece of clothing that Ted Grant gave her, but it was black and it looked kind of cool. Alright, well, whatever. So, moving on. Yeah, let's talk about Roy. Oh, I'm loving the reaction to this online. This is one of those moments where it's just so awesome to watch an entire fandom just utterly shit themselves with joy and shock and like, oh my god, I can't wait until next episode. I mean, these are the moments that make it all worthwhile. This is good TV and I love it. But again, this totally fits in with what I've been saying since the first episode of this season. Sarah's reaction to the person that killed her was, she wasn't scared, she wasn't angry or anything, she was just surprised. What are you doing here? Well, that's absolutely the reaction that she would have from Roy. She would have no reason to think that Roy was any kind of a threat to her. Roy is her ally, and to at least some degree, her friend, I suppose, and even her student. I mean, she did indeed train Roy at least a little bit beforehand. So, yeah. And this goes back to a lot of people are bringing the Mirakuru on this, and that's supposedly possible. Roy certainly did look out of it, and remember, Roy killed a cop with an arrow, if I remember correctly, while he was out in a Mirakuru rage. Now, I have a feeling somebody manipulated Roy's, sort of screwed with Roy's mind to make this happen. This isn't, Roy has no real reason to genuinely hurt Sarah. So that's what I'm thinking. And, yeah, nothing really else to say about that. Felicity's mom, we meet her this episode, and I really love that relationship between Felicity and her mom, just because it reminds me so much of my own relationship with my mom. I mean, my mom is always kind of giving me when I'm talking with her, it's like, well, I don't understand things like that. Or, I'm often having to, okay, I'm going to have to, bring this down to a more simple level so that mom gets what I'm saying here. And, as much as I love my mom, we really have just about nothing in common. So I totally understand where Felicity is coming from in this episode. And this episode does a really nice job of introducing us to her mom and kind of showing both, the stuff about her mom that really pisses Felicity off, and then letting us have that really great moment at the end where Felicity and her mom reconcile, and she goes, I get I'm tougher than I thought I was, and I get that from you. And that was good stuff. It is really interesting how we often really tend to latch on sometimes to the parts of our parents that we don't like, the parts of them that are very different from ourselves. And when we do that, it's an understandable thing. There's always going to be a little bit of tension and resentment and, bad feelings between parents and kids, because that's just a part of human relationships, human dynamics, part of growing up with someone. But that doesn't erase the things that we have in common. It doesn't erase love. Again, my mom and I have almost nothing in common, but I love her to bits. She's my mom. She's always done right by me. She's made her share of mistakes, undeniable, but she's always loved me, and I've never doubted that for one moment of my entire life. And I realize that makes me more fortunate than a lot of people in this world. So, family, huh? But anyway, of course, the real star of the show is our lovely Felicity Smoak, and this episode does an absolutely fantastic and very much overdue of really fleshing out Felicity's background, giving her a real, true, and proper secret origin. And I just can't say how happy this makes me. Like everybody else who watches the show, I love Felicity to bits. I'm just so happy she's a great addition to the show. And keep in mind, folks, she was not intended to be a reoccurring character. She was just kind of intended to be a one-shot character, and things just went in a completely different direction. And that explains in a lot of ways why it took us this long to get some serious details on her. Again, she wasn't planned to be a major character in season 1. Season 2 was where Emily Bett Richards got promoted to regular, and we started getting some hints about Felicity's past there. Here's where it all came home to roost. And I absolutely love that Oliver gave Felicity a hand with taking down Cooper. But in the end, that was Felicity's battle to fight. And I love how Felicity's mom even said it, that if Cooper didn't have these goons and all this other stuff, that Felicity would just take him down in 10 seconds. All Oliver did in this episode was give Felicity an opportunity to fight Cooper on even ground, and Felicity, bam, that guy didn't even last 5 seconds. So that goes to show you that the training that Felicity has been given from Dig and Sarah and Oliver has indeed paid off. But again, it's just another example of showing that Felicity Smoak is a hell of a lot tougher than she ever thought she could be, and Felicity Smoak is just goddamn awesome, people. I'm gushing here and I don't care. Let's see, is there anything else to talk about this episode? No, nothing else is coming to mind. Oh yeah, that opening at the opening of this episode with everybody just doing training and fighting with each other, really cool. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Arrow probably does have the best stunt team on television, and we are intensely lucky that we get to see stuff like this every week. I mean, you just look back. I look at this show now and I think back to how skeptical people were and all the complaints I heard when this show first came on the air. And granted, the show took some time to work out the kinks, but it since then has grown and blossomed into something glorious. I mean, this really is the crown jewel of what DC has going on out there right now. Now, granted, Constantine is a pretty darn good show so far. I've been enjoying it. I haven't been doing reviews for it because I just got so much on my plate. But I have really high hopes for that show. And, Gotham, also a good show, but again, still working out the kinks. But, what can I say, folks? Arrow is just damn good this season, and this is unquestionably, in my book, one of the best episodes of the series so far. And things are about to get even crazier, I can just tell, especially after that preview for next episode. Oh, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you this time around. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter @HoosierJedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.